Santa Claus, here comes Santa Claus, running down Santa Claus.
Welcome back to our daily show as this Christmas end of the year rush continues right here across, well, the world. Hey, Tom Emery joins us now, friend of the show, and really excited to talk with Tom about this. Why really is Springfield the state capital? Those that live in the city of Alton know of the square, that State House Square that's up here near College Avenue, and know that maybe Alton could have been a potential suitor. And Tom, there's more to this, isn't there?
Absolutely. First off, CJ, thanks for having me, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Alton made a very significant bid to become the state capital in the 1830s. Some people in the Alton area, the RiverBender area, I'm sure know that. But it, like many other things in Illinois history, and particularly the Illinois political history, it was a convoluted process. And even though Alton ended up being the people's choice, which we'll talk about later, it ended up going to Springfield, which offered the most money and the best location.
Got you. So that's interesting. And, how did this process start? When was it decided that, we have to pick our state capital? When did that process truly begin?
Well, Springfield is the third state capital of Illinois, and I'm kind of backtracking a little bit here, and I hope people at home aren't saying, oh, geez, here he goes again, talking away here. But the first capital of the state had been the territorial capital, Kaskaskia. For those of you that don't know, it's in the southwestern part of the state near Chester. Kaskaskia, which has a population of about 14 people today, and I'm not making that up, that is about what it is today, was a very significant town economically, culturally, and politically in the 1700s and 1800s. But in 1819, the capital moved to this newly created town called Vandalia, which is nothing more than really pretty much a wide spot on the bluffs near the Kaskaskia River. It was in Vandalia because it's hard for us to imagine today, but the population center of Illinois through that period was in the southern part of the state. Vandalia was actually part of the northern end of the population center because the residency was starting to move north. Well, the capital was in Vandalia for 20-some years, but a lot of people did not like having it there. Now, and I'm not criticizing Vandalia today. If you've been there, it's a very nice town with a beautiful state house. Mm-hmm. And people are watching us, listening to us today in Vandalia and Fayette County. I don't want you to think I'm ripping you in any way, believe me.
Right.
But at the time, in the 1830s, there was a lot of dissatisfaction with Vandalia. People thought it was dirty, was not particularly hospitable. And there's movement by a number of different cities, including Alton, to see if they could entice the state capital away from Vandalia. So this started in the mid-1830s, really. In 1833, the Illinois House authorized the selection of a new state capital, and that's where this story begins.
Why? Oh, sorry about that, Tom. Let me.
Oh, you're fine.
3, 2, 1. And Tom, why? What was the decision? Was it just needed? Was it just time to? Was it just one of those things that was just time to really decide on that state capital? What was the driving force behind that, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, not at all. Vandalia at the time was not seen very well by some people in the state, and again, that's unfortunate because I think that is a great place today. But the current state capitol building, which was the one before the State House that sits in Vandalia today, was in pretty bad shape. It was thrown up in a hurry after a fire in 1823. It had heavily sagging floors, bulging walls, and some people refused to go in there because it was a safety hazard.
Wow.
One modern writer called it, and I'm quoting here, a ramshackle aspect, and that's for the town itself. So they got thinking, well, the state's progressing. Now we've been a part of the union for about 15 years. Let's get this capital out of Vandalia and let's take it somewhere else.
Right. And so, I just find this process so fascinating. Was this, kind of a morale booster, or one of those things where maybe multiple, towns like in Alton, like others that, tried to make the pitch? Was it a unifying message for some communities? Like, hey, let's come together. Let's get the state capital here.
I think so. And the prestige of having a state capital, as well as the money that comes with it, was certainly was a draw. The people really wanted to have that. For example, Alton had the booming river trade. It had 2,000. It's an interesting number. Its 1830 population was 2,222. That's actually one of the largest cities in the state. Well, the idea of drawing the state capital to your city is really a boon. So that's why Alton and others wanted to try and do it.
Wow. Well, and as the process started, what did the newspaper articles at the time look like? Was media playing a part in this at all, or was it just simply a coverage map?
They were playing some of a role, but there weren't a whole lot of newspapers in Illinois at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those don't even exist today. The ones that did have the newspapers were trying to push for it. But newspapers were playing, it was more of a political thing than a media thing in my point of view, although I'm sure people may disagree, but to me it was a political thing.
And why is that, Tom? Why did this become such a political conversation? Because to me, especially in 2024, what I'm just thinking of things that we're dealing with, in our current situation of affairs is, is the state capitol really a partisan issue? But I guess it really was back then.
And it drew some rather strange proponents. Each of the towns, we'll talk about the towns a little later on, seemed to have a proponent, had someone who stepped forth and said, hey, let's get the capital of my city. Let's get the capital in this area. So if it was in some ways partisan issue, but also became more of a pride issue as well.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, and who became the proponents for the prospective cities? How did the finalists, if you will, or the main players, the main advocates, come into play in this?
Well, let's start with who the main players were, because those are some interesting cities. Alton jumps in. Like I say, Alton being one of the largest cities in the state, that's not unusual. Springfield, which had only been founded in 1821 and only had 600 people in 1830, jumps in. Peoria, Jacksonville, and you wouldn't think Jacksonville would be, but Jacksonville in 1834 was actually the largest city in the state.
Wow.
With a mix of culture, economics, and politics that few other towns or cities in Illinois could even come close to matching. Vandalia tries to stay in. The current state capitol building in Vandalia today was put up in an effort to help the city keep the capital. They built a new building. That's why that was there. Now, here's the one place that was really unusual. Some people said that Illiopolis, and for those of you that don't know, Illiopolis is a small town between Springfield and Decatur, just off I-72, is in the mix, but also an unspecified location which is called, and I'm quoting this, the geographic center of the state.
Whoa.
That spot is a matter of debate. Some people think the Illiopolis and the geographic center were the same thing. So you got
Gotcha.
Springfield, Alton, Jacksonville, Peoria, this geographic center of the state, and the incumbent, Vandalia, who are all going out for this.
That's well over a hand. I mean, you have seven main players in this conversation. And was there one that kind of started maybe getting a little bit ahead of the pack earlier on? How did this start to wind down? Was it one of those things where like Alton jumped out of the gate of people wanting it, and then Springfield kind of snuck in, and maybe Peoria did? How did the race for this kind of run in?
That's exactly how it played out, CJ, just how you said it.
Really?
In August of 1834, they took it to a vote of the people in a non-binding referendum to choose the next state capital. People could say who they wanted this next state capital to be. The legislature didn't have to go along with it. It was just a non-binding, it was advisory. Turnout was light. Fewer voters, like 7,000 fewer voters cast a ballot on that than had voted for the governor's race that same day.
Wow.
At the time, Illinois had their elections in August. Alton was the winner. People of choice. It edged out Vandalia by 427 votes. Springfield was a close third.
Wow.
So the people wanted Alton.
Wow.
Based on that.
So, and now, this is where I find this fascinating, because with the non-binding referendum, I'm sure people at the time think, wow, this is exciting. The people have spoken. Hopefully they listen to us. Did the elected officials receive this non-binding referendum with any type of weight or levity to it? Or was it just kind of one of those, well, they were able to exercise their right and we're glad they did?
I think it's more probably the latter more than anything, because the proponents pretty much seem to ignore it. Stephen A. Douglas, who was originally from the Jacksonville area, is pushing for Jacksonville. He thinks bring it to Jacksonville. Got the people, got the culture, got the geography, bring it here. Lincoln, who is from the New Salem, Petersburg area, he's pushing for Springfield. because then the Capitol is literally his backyard. So they may be thinking about what people want, but they're also thinking about what they want.
Well, and that's a very interesting point too. And I've been just kind of doing on my own just a little bit of some reading about the start of the start of our country and the placement of Washington D.C. And the questions that kind of seem like obvious ones really become poignant, like the transportation issue in the 1800s, comparatively speaking to now. I'd much rather maybe walk 5 miles than travel by horseback 115 to get to the Capitol.
Absolutely. That's one thing people are thinking, because now you can hop in the car if you're living in the Alton area, go to Springfield in about 2 hours.
Right.
Well, back then, that was about a 2-day trip, and the railroad's not coming to our area until about 1852, 20 years later. So this is a bigger deal. The transportation becomes one of the calling cards for all the candidates vying, because Alton's got the Mississippi.
Right.
Very important. Peoria's got the Illinois River. Pretty important. Jacksonville does not have a navigable river. Springfield's hoping the Sangamon River is going to be navigable. For those of you that have seen the Sangamon River, that's just laughable today to think that you could get a steamboat up that sucker. But they tried without success. So Springfield's thinking, well, we got the river. We don't know if we navigate yet, but we're sure going to try. And of course, Illiopolis is kind of out there by itself, and this is not that unusual, because look at American history, a number of state capitals put in largely uninhabited areas that weren't really that well developed. A good example is Lansing, Michigan. And here's something else for thought for you too, CJ. Of the 10 largest cities in the nation, only one is a state capital, and that's Phoenix, Arizona.
Really?
Yeah. So, people say, well, why isn't our capital in Chicago? Well, that's not that unusual. That would be somewhere else. And keep in mind, if you notice, Chicago was not vying for this, mainly because in the 1830s, Chicago was a little more than a glorified fur trading outpost.
That seriously?
Chicago's not even a real player at the time.
That's incredible. And now, my question is, because that's such a good point, that you brought up there, Tom, with, like Lansing, Michigan, you just brought up. Because to me, one thing that I don't think, I don't know too much about, early Illinois history, but one thing that I was learning about, just the building of our country was going to the grid system and how we built our towns. And did that come into play with why maybe some didn't want to go back to maybe a location that was already set up so they could, quite frankly, literally build their own capital for efficiency?
Oh, I'm sure it did. And that's kind of what happened with Vandalia, because that was pretty much built. That was pretty much just a small settlement in the woods near the Kaskaskia River. So that was kind of the thinking there, that they built their own. And if you think about it too, CJ, Alton in 1835, 1836, really makes perfect sense for a capital. It's very logical to see why people wanted it there.
Right.
You've got the river, which is a main source of transportation, period. We think now Alton would be out of the way in southwestern Illinois, but where the population center of the state was, that was actually pretty close to what you needed to have. Had some more people there. It was one of the largest cities of the state, so we kind of snicker and say, well, Alton being capital. Well, in the 1830s, that was quite logical.
And that's really where I find this so fascinating. Tom, this is where my mind wanders, but I want to get to that wandering portion here in a second. How long did this campaign for the location of the state capitol, that finalized spot, take?
It took about 3 years.
Wow.
Because it ended up being decided in the 10th General Assembly. And as you know, CJ, we don't exactly have a very nice political history in the state of Illinois. No. The idea of corruption in Illinois, I always laugh at, because that goes back 180 years. That is nothing new, believe me. But the 10th General Assembly was the most star-studded political body, I think, in Illinois history, because it had legislators such as Abraham Lincoln, Stephen A. Douglas, James Shields, a future senator who challenged Lincoln to a duel on Alton, as most people know, James Semple, who founded the town of Elsa, Edward Baker, who Lincoln named his second son after. It had a host of future governors, U.S. senators, congressmen. That was probably the most star-studded body in Illinois politics.
That is incredible. Honestly, that is incredible. Tom, not to cut you off, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and that's where this decision is going to be chosen. the next
Wow.
capital. That's one of the things they do. Now, they leave a rather checkered political history because they voted for internal improvements, which was a massive infrastructure program, which the state could not afford and didn't even have the manpower, the supplies, or anything to do, and that ended up putting us in a financial hole that in many ways was worse than what the state's just experienced the last 10 years or so. So they didn't exactly leave a great legacy, but they are, some big-time names there. Well, they're the ones that end up voting on where the next state capital is going to be. And in early 1837, the voting is held in the legislature. Springfield makes the best offer. They donate land as well as $50,000 to construct a new capitol building. In the 1830s, that's a significant amount of money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it ends up going for four rounds voting for it decided. And I'm not trying to bore anyone with this. In the first vote, Springfield goes way to the front. Vandalia and Peoria are tied for second, way back. Alton's in fourth, so it's still running pretty well.
Wow.
Yeah, Jacksonville's is in fifth. They're not doing too bad. I should also mention that a few other towns, I don't know how hard they campaigned to be the capital, but a few other towns are getting a handful of votes. Carrollton, up in Greene County, got 3 votes.
Really? That's interesting.
So there's a handful of other towns. Decatur got a few votes. Springfield continues leading on the second ballot, but guess who's in second place? It's distant, but Alton moves up second.
Wow.
Alton stays around in the third ballot. They're in third place, while Springfield goes jumps a few more spots. The fourth ballot proves the last one. Springfield clinches a bid with 73 votes. So Springfield would end up the capital would settle in Springfield on, of all dates, July 4th, 1839.
Was that coincidental?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
I never thought it was. I think it was ceremonial more than anything.
Well, and
but go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, was there any repercussion to this? Were folks offended that their voices, weren't heard in this binding referendum? Was it one of those that was still such a celebratory moment that the good kind of outweighed maybe the negative thoughts on this? What was the reaction immediately to this?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the reactions for the towns that didn't get it were really ticked off. Vandalia in particular was very upset about it, and I guess stayed upset for a number of years. Now, here's one thing that has been bad around by Illinois historians since. Some historians have accused Lincoln of trading votes to get this. Lincoln was part of a group of legislators from present-day Menard and Sangamon counties called the Long Nine. There were 7 representatives and 2 senators. They were called the Long Nine. One of the reasons they were called the Long Nine is because collectively they're 54 feet high. They're
Oh, God.
Yeah. Now, think about this. With collectively 54 feet high, Lincoln was 6'4", so some of those guys had to be shorter than 6 feet, but I digress. They are one of the legendary groups of Illinois politics, the Long Nine. They weren't together for very long. They were only together for really part of a session. But some people said that Lincoln and his Long Nine associates were pretty much trading votes, promising towns railroads under the infrastructure plan, whatever, to try to get votes to go to get capital Springfield. Thomas Ford, a governor who was elected in 1842, and Thomas Ford's probably one of the best 2 or 3 governors we've had in our state's history. He became an acclaimed historian. He said that Lincoln was log rolling. That's a quote. They were just trading votes left and right.
Wow.
Since Lincoln denied that himself, and since a number of historians have debunked that notion, so I don't know that Lincoln really traded votes, but there's no question that Lincoln won that in Springfield. And I will say this for whatever it's worth. When Lincoln ran for president in 1860 and 1864, Fayette County, which a Democrat anyway, voted against Lincoln both times. Now, that may or may not have had anything to do with him at the Capitol, but there were some better feelings about it. We know that.
Well, and see, Tom, this is where I just find this so fascinating. And only one can, and I'm not one to kind of ponder what could have been, but, what, in all reality, do you have any thoughts of what the state would have looked like today if the Capitol was not in Springfield? Let's just say it was in Alton.
Well, I think one thing that Alton would have enjoyed, and Alton would end up being one of the largest communities in the state for a number of decades. They were still 10th in 1860,
wow.
And they were 19th in 1890. So they were still one of the largest communities in the state. But if you think about this, and other people probably debate this, but in my view, Alton's population would have steadily risen. It would have been more of an economic powerhouse. I think the political pull would have been remarkable. And there's just so many things that would have went with it. On the flip side, I'm sure some people out there thinking this, and I thought the same thing too. With Illinois' checkered, sordid political history, all the problems that come with Illinois politics may have been centered in Alton's. There may have been kind of a negative thing, so you never know what that would be. And I'll say something else too. I've wondered too, because the voting was just a few months before the Lovejoy tragedy, which unfortunately really followed Alton around for a long, long time. I wonder how that would have affected things too. Had Alton been chosen, would they have been able to retain the capital based on the fallout from the Lovejoy tragedy?
That's a very interesting point, Tom. And before I let you go, I know that we're short for time and we can talk about this for hours. I really appreciate it, Tom. How long did it take for the construction of our state capitol once this was going? I know that you said July the 4th, but I couldn't get the years right. How many years did it take to build?
They moved in 1839.
Okay.
And the capital, I believe, was unfinished at the time. And I will say, as postscript, CJ, there was still effort in the 1860s to try to get the capital out of Springfield. They tried this again, but it was not nearly as active in the 1830s. Jacksonville made a bid and others, and there are some people, because I'm from Carlinville, there are some people that believe the fabulous Macoupin County Courthouse was started in an effort to try to entice the capital from Springfield to come to Carlinville. I never used to believe that, but as a historian, I've got to think about that later on, and that may well have been based on the secrecy and the deception with which our courthouse is built. So you never know. But it's just really something to think about how different the landscape of Illinois. It's a very good choice of words you had, that how much different it would have been and how much different the Riverbend area had been had the capital been there.
And before I let you go, Tom, my final question for you, again a pondering one in a way, is why? How come? When did the transition, or when did the movement of state capitals really start to cease and slow down? Because I don't think we'll see something like this for a while, or probably for my lifetime.
No, I don't think we will either. Several cities had, in the 1830s and 1840s, were changing capitals. The original capital of Indiana was a little town called Corydon, which is in the southern part of the state. Iowa City was the capital of Iowa previous to Des Moines. Of course, now it's home of the University of Iowa. The territorial capital, the capital ended up in Lansing. As a postscript, the architect of our courthouse in Macoupin County, Elijah Myers, left this area to design the Michigan State Capitol.
Wow.
So that was really the time you saw that, and by then things were becoming more settled by the 1840s, mid-century. And like I said, I don't think we'll ever see that type of thing again.
Well, and Tom Emery, thank you so much for your time. This was such a great conversation, and I always enjoy talking with you. Thank you so much. Have a Merry Christmas. And
go ahead. I'm sorry. I just want to say on behalf of all the people listening, you do a tremendous job on RiverBender Radio. We all enjoy listening to you very, very much, and you do such a fantastic job with us. So just thanks for listening today. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Hey, thank you, Tom. That means a lot to me. Merry Christmas. Have a Happy New Year, and I can't wait to talk to you again soon about more fascinating things.
Have a good one, CJ.
Take a quick break. More of our daily show comes right around the corner after this.